What is your thought of it as the Jewish consider the Sabbath the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling, give up, just for now, on trying to make the world different than it is. Ping, pray. Sorry, let me start that again. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has become clear. Do not reach out your hands, reach out your heart, reach out your words, reach out all your tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where you cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live. Poem was written by Reverend Lynn Unger, called
Mm.
Pandemic.
Mm. Boy, has this pandemic brought a lot of issues that we have been burying for a long time, and the traumas that we are collectively experiencing continue to be magnified, continue to be exposed to the light, and we are needing gatherings like this to be able to reach out and to touch to that deeper place inside of us that connects us to one another. When we do these things, we it's really important to clarify. There was an issue that came up a few days ago, and I just want to make sure that those who are watching this and those who are going to be watching this later, that this group here is non-political and non-religious, meaning this we embrace all. This is about healing the soul. The soul doesn't matter what political affiliation that you may have. Uh, we're here to gather together to understand our deeper nature, to feel and to understand what is the workings within the soul. And it is our dedication and purpose and mission here to be able to dive deep into understanding those parts of ourselves that need to be exposed and to be healed. And yes, when we're talking about the soul, we're going to be talking about spirit and the language of the soul, the things that help us to understand it. And sometimes that brings in religious figures, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're linking up to any particular religion or any particular politics. We have had people who have felt that they were being bombarded or overwhelmed, that they couldn't say what they really wanted to say. They enjoyed being here and joining us and sitting in this sacred circle that we have, but that once it became too politicized, they felt withdrawn and that they could no longer say what they wanted to say or to be able to participate. And we want to welcome everybody. We want to welcome all who come here to be able to share in this wonderful group that we have that speaks about healing the soul and the warrior soul and the warrior's calling. The warrior's calling is an archetypal journey. We are going to be wounded on this journey. And if we don't have people who can sit with us and to bear witness to those wounds, we can't get through it. And we need to have that sacred circle that allows us to be able to listen to each other without flinching, without carrying a judgment. And I really want to clarify that. That is, both Chuck and I are in agreement on this. We want this to be a welcoming place that transcends all of the polarization that keeps us divided, and we want to be able to make sure that everybody feels welcome. Now,
Charlie, can I just jump in?
sure.
Yeah, let me also just reiterate what Charlie's saying. We all are doing our work for various reasons, whether it's love of country, love of people, love of the world. But the point is, we're doing it for love. and we're doing it for everyone. And I think that's the important part. So if anybody ever feels, and I think Charlie and I will continue to do this, is if you feel that this is not meeting your needs, you can always email or call either one, or you can call me at least or email me and say, hey, this is what's up for me. Because I think it's really important that this group, we we're here for healing. We're healing the soul. We're helping the spirit, all spirits work together to move forward. So I just thank you, Charlie, for letting me throw that in there.
Well, oh, thank you. It's important. We want to be able to, it was kind of sad to hear, or this. It was a very difficult conversation that we had, and so that's why it's important when we actually, people are going to be listening to this later. It's really our intention is to be one of those healing circles that people can look and feel like, I can go there. And I can be heard, and I can be watched, and I can be listened to, and people will welcome my story no matter where I came from, and that's how healing really happens. And one of the things is we've been talking about the myth of Prometheus and how it connects to our deeper soul journey, and how it connects to the warrior's journey, and how it connects to the non-combatants and our moral injuries, and the things that are going on all around us, and how just recently we are just made an announcement that we're going to be leaving Afghanistan in September
11th.
September 11th, the 20th year anniversary of 9/11, and the impact that that's going to have on our veterans, on our warriors who heard that call. They went out serving their country to do what their country called them to do, and sacrificed a lot of blood, a lot of their soul, spirit. They lost parts of themselves. They lost their brothers and sisters. They paid a heavy price in blood. And then to feel like, wow, what was the point of all that? What was the purpose? And we need to be able to have these kinds of conversations to be able to help, so that we don't lose any more to the sense of alienation and desperation that so often plagues our veteran community, because they feel like, what was the point? What was the point of all that? And we looked at things like the myth of Prometheus to help us to understand these things, because all of a sudden we've stolen this fire, we have this knowledge, we have this suddenly this inspiration or deeper truth, or we see things that no longer we can't hide from, we can't run from it anymore. And so we're fleeing in order to let people know the truth of what is going on here, what is actually happening, why we are doing the things that we are doing. And we try to give it to humanity, not for our sake, but for humanity's sake, for the people, to liberate themselves, so that we don't repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And very often we can be locked up and tied down onto that rock, feeling trapped, that what we had to share, the revelation, the understanding, that part was rejected in some way as we tried to bring more truth into the world. And to say enough is enough. We need to be wiser in how we use our warriors before committing them to something that, well, we don't know. Maybe it's going to mean something in 20 years. Maybe it's not going to mean something in 20 years. We don't need. That's terrible policy. That's terrible way of dealing with issues of life and death. We should be making those decisions from a place of nobility and goodness and honesty. And so this myth of Prometheus is a journey of the soul. These myths help us to understand the soul's journey as it moves through its trials and tribulations. One of the things that I think is insignificant, does this myth of Prometheus really mean? What is it? What did he give humanity with this fire? All right, when we look at the myth, briefly, we talked about it in our last gathering, but just briefly, Prometheus created man out of clay, or humankind out of clay. It was his favorite creature. His brother Epimetheus gives all these traits and qualities and strengths to the animals, and he forgets all about man. So what does Prometheus do? Steals the fire from the gods so that he has, humankind has divine intelligence to be able to master the world, to be able to liberate themselves from the forces around them so that they can become the integration of the divine and the clay. But he was punished for bringing that down, because that's to invite that fire into a human being, that makes the gods become less and less powerful, because now we have empowered humankind. So what is this fire? It's he gave humanity reason, and he domesticated animals, and he invented ships. He taught them math. He taught them medicine and mining and house building, how to build farms, how to look at the stars in order to be able to farm. He gave fire in order to be able to help people to be able to utilize the world around them, and so that they were no longer at the despotic rule of Zeus, this newly crowned god, and the tyranny of the forces and the unchecked power of the invisible world. Think about that, the unchecked power of the invisible world. You're given that divine intelligence to be able to distinguish and differentiate truth and falsehood. But because we ended up getting that power, we have to be, we suffer for it, because there's a consequence that comes with understanding the nature of light and dark, the opposites in the world. And there's a treasure trove of symbolism when it comes to fire. It means love, it means lust, it means spirit, it means life, it means passion, art, imagination, freedom, creativity, revolution. It's also knowledge and wisdom and truth. And it's divine comfort, and at the same time, it's divine fury. It's the light, it's warmth, it's comfort, it's culture, it's nourishment. It's technology, it's invention. Fire can purify, it can cleanse, it can regenerate, and it can destroy. So this symbolism ranges from sexual to theological. It's humanity acquiring something divine that is forbidden. And then the tragic consequence of this expansion of consciousness and awareness is like the Genesis story, where you get this download of the knowledge of good and evil, and now you have to be banished for it, because you have to learn how to use this, because now it is a power bestowed with you. It is a wonderful, wonderful myth of the soul's journey through life. But what ends up happening is we get stuck on the rock for too long. There's another interpretation that I absolutely love, and it reads Prometheus as the human soul seeking truth. And I just love this version of it. It was done by Marsilio Ficino. He was a 15th century Renaissance man. And he was attempting to reconcile Ficino was the classical with the Christian dogma of the period. And he writes this beautiful understanding of this myth. He says, having stolen one beam of the celestial light, the soul feels in chains. Only death can release her bonds and carry her to the source of all knowledge. End quote. How many of us in our own lives have tasted that clarity, that joy, that freedom, that moment where just a divine taste of something transpersonal, a moment of joy, an original thought or an idea, an overwhelming feeling of love, a transformational experience. One of the transformational experiences I have, I mean, they're just a quick story. I took this trip to Greece with Dr. Tick and Kate, and it was one of the most transformative experiences I've ever had in my entire life. And as I'm wandering, I feel like I'm moving through this landscape of Greece and the temples and having these experiences and dreams and things that were waking up inside of me, and had this profound awakening dream. And then I came back to the world. And it was, I had changed. I had tasted this elixir of life, this ambrosia, I had tasted it. And now I was back home. And when I came back from this glorious experience and that freedom I felt, that freedom of that liberation, only to be chained again by the tyranny of my own life. The tyranny of my past, the choices, the decisions, the things that happened to me in the military, the moral injuries that I had, the guilt and the shame, and all of that combined. But I had still had tasted it. When we dive deep into this myth, it's so rich. It is incredible how rich and deep and so many different interpretations. The more we dive deep, the more understandings we get, the more insights we have about ourselves and our own soul's journey through life. In so many ways, the movement that we see in this myth between tyranny and freedom, thought and force, love and power, are exemplified in this myth, and they play out in our own lives as well. Prometheus is a defiant, powerful, powerless martyr of an unjust, powerful God who rules arbitrarily and demands blind obedience. How many of us veterans have felt we had to blindly obey the things that we were told to do, but we knew deep down in our conscience that what we were asked to do violated a deeper, deeper part of us? I know what I did. And if you don't obey, if you run down that mountaintop with that torch, you steal that fire, you say, no, what we're doing here is unjust, wrong, whatever it may be. And if you buck the system, you call out the gods on their deceptions or on their lies, you're going to be punished. But ultimately, if you read the myth, your soul will be free. It will eventually be free. And in this, Prometheus is the hero of humanity. He's a noble character. He's compassionate. He's selfless in his nature. He's got an indomitable will and courage. And he does this in order to give humanity a chance to recognize the power within themselves, to become free. He has no ulterior motive, so far as we know, and he's not trying to overthrow Zeus. It's really important. He's not trying to overthrow Zeus or the gods or the goddesses, but he is trying to liberate humanity from the forces operating behind the scenes. What does Prometheus give us? He gives us three things. There are two things that I think, and then I'll pass it on to Chuck. He gives us two things: the light of truth, and he is the bringer of consciousness. How do we know this? How do you know about this? Whether the truth and this bringer of consciousness, because we've been given the ability to think for ourselves. No other species, as we know of, can think for themselves. That divine spark that lies within us allows us to free ourselves from the bondage on that rock and to set our souls free.
Thank you, Charlie. So let's just think a minute. Let's just sit for a second and think about what Prometheus has done. Prometheus is our champion of the humans, and he has such a soul for that. And each of our souls are our champion for each one of us. And wow, how that works. So I'd like to talk about the next in the series. We've heard Charlie talk about Prometheus Bound and how he stole fire for humanity, how he helped give humanity intelligence and understanding. And Prometheus Unbounded is the start of Prometheus's healing. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about my own moral injury, sort of my own way that I was bound to that rock. I served in the Air Force like Charlie, and where Charlie served in the targeting portion of the nuclear missiles, I actually served test launching the vehicles that would propel those missiles, propel those warheads to other countries. And like all, I think many of us, we all wanted to do a wonderful job. We were like, this is it. We're going to help our country. We're going to promote democracy. We are going to do this in a noble way. And it wasn't until I actually participated in a launch where a lot of very important people who thought they were very important, actually came up and was viewing the launch. And what I found was they had no regard for the powerfulness of this weapon. These weapons can take out cities, just one. And just a little bit of a note, Manhattan has targeted at least 15 times. So think about that. There will be no Manhattan left. Where I live in New Mexico, there are 2,500 nuclear weapons stored. Think about that. So I'm there. I'm a second lieutenant. I may have been, a year in the military, and I'm doing my job. And these folks are celebrating this weapon. They have no regard for what it really can do. And that started the beginning of my end in the military. That started my time on the rock with the eagle pecking at my liver and living those emotions day after day and not knowing how to really alleviate this. And this is where Prometheus Unbound, this is where we're going to start to really look into how do we start to heal. And we start to heal by recognizing that our soul is our champion. And Prometheus started that through the love of mankind, the fact that he championed us, and he was not going to compromise himself. He was not going to compromise that. So that's what he was there for. He made a mistake. He recognized that, but he kept living to his values and his characteristics. And by doing that, he kept to his truest self. He kept connecting to it. And Prometheus wouldn't give up. Prometheus recognized that if he gave up, then he was going to forever disconnect himself from humankind. And when we give up, we disconnect ourselves from the soul, from our own soul. During his time on the rock, Mercury came down, and this is interesting. Mercury wanted to negotiate, wanted to reconcile with Zeus, reconcile with this tyranny, reconcile in a way that wasn't going to do anything for Prometheus. Matter of fact, it would destroy Prometheus. And think about our veterans. Think about those veterans who are asked to say, well, compromise what you're doing. Do it this way. do it in a way that is not going to value who you are. And look what happens. Many of our veterans continue to be in a world of hurt. They continue to be in therapies that don't work for them, or on drugs that don't work. And they end up just, what do? They drown. May not drown physically, but they drown mentally, and they just sit there and they just don't go anywhere. And Mercury was sent to really get, uh, uh, in my mind, really feed the trauma of Prometheus. And Prometheus said no, he would not give up. And so the furries came down, and they started to say things like, mankind's not good enough for you. You did all this, and they would belittle him. And that hurt Prometheus. But Prometheus knew he had to focus on, you might say, his own soul. He knew what he needed to do for mankind. Now, when this is all going on, his wife Asia and her sister Panthea are trying to help him. They're supporting him through their own work, and they come up to this Demogorgon, who is really a spirit of the underworld, and his whole thing is about eternal love. And he talks about eternal love, and that's what the soul is. So he starts to connect Asia and Panthea to this idea of eternal love and soul, and they themselves are connected to the earth, and how the earth is the spirit of love. Now, during all this, Prometheus is still there. Prometheus is still going, I'm being the champion, over and over. And during this time, Prometheus starts to really recognize that this is something that he must do, that he must be with. And when he does that, it is, in my opinion, that's when Hercules comes and frees Prometheus from the rock. And what's important here is, I think, for us, the same thing happens when we are connected back with our souls, when we recognize where we've left our soul. And I want to tell a little story about that for myself. What I realized is, at one point in my time, I had to go down to a launch control facility. That was something that you use to launch these nuclear weapons. And I find myself going down there, and I go into one because I had to do some evaluation work in there. I realized later on, about 20, 25 years later, that I actually left my soul down in this launch control facility. And I left, I come back up thinking nothing's wrong, but my soul is there going, it knew that there was something very wrong with what we were doing with our nuclear weapons. We were taking our nuclear weapons and we were blackmailing and coercing and using it to terrify the rest of the world to bend to our will. And so when I recognize that, as Prometheus recognized the fact that his truest purpose was the champion of mankind, I realized that my soul was the champion of me. And that started my healing process. Prometheus was then really able to leave his life to begin his healing. And the third play, which may be another one of our gatherings, is Prometheus becomes the light bearer. He starts to live his truest self, or as Bill Plotkin would say his mythic poetic identity was the light bearer. He brought light or fire, as Charlie has so eloquently talked about, as being warmth, as being spirit, as a multidimensional um, being, you might say, into our lives. And what I have found when I work with my own trauma, and I've seen it with others, is that when we connect with our soul, we connect with that truest self, and we start really looking for our true identity, that's the catharsis, that's the healing that happens for each of us. And that catharsis is finding the soul. And that just starts, then leads us into the warrior's dance, the forgiveness that we need, the reconciliation, our rehumanization, the rehumanization of other people, our integration, our restoration and restitution, our service, the witness and community, the meaning and blessing. And that goes to the meaning and blessing of our trauma as well. It really, as Charlie had said, connects us to the light of the truth and brings us to that conscious level of understanding of what our soul purpose is all about. Or what you might say is our noble purpose. Some folks, because of language, might not see soul as something that they're too, oh, no, I'm not going to go there. So we can call it the noble purpose. We can call it that true spirit, that cosmic spirit that we're all a part of. I'd like to read a poem by Hugh Scanlon that I think really just hits this home of what Prometheus Unbounded is all about. Oh God, I begin to walk out of the darkness and turmoil of conflict. Give me the strength to find a lasting and gentle existence. Give me the desire to treat all living creatures with respect. Help me to do no harm for the remaining days of my life. May I accept who I am now, not who I've been in the past. Help me to remember and to dim, not to forget, the tragic past. Take my experiences and teach me to use them to understand others wherever I go, to ban fear, hate, and violence from my thinking. Let me understand how one person can make the world a better place. Show me the reasons that I am still here and that what I am to do. Give me the strength to face the time that I have left here, to reconnect with humanity, to feel and to give love. Oh God, make me whole again. Amen. And I say that that is done through your soul purpose. One of the things that I think that I left out, and I'm going to bring it in now, was that Prometheus was bound to the earth. Asia and Thea were also part of the earth. The love of the earth is what we connect our souls with. And that is how I believe we end up finding the purpose. Nature helps us do that. The earth helps us do that. So healing starts with nature. Living your truest self starts with nature. And I just like for us to think about whatever trauma you have had, how communing with your soul, how being with yourself helps us start to heal as we go forth. So I thought that we would take a few minutes, maybe breathe a little before we get into the questions portion of our show. And then towards the end, I will do a quick meditation, one of the things I do to help get connected with soul. So let's just take a minute and breathe. We breathe in and we breathe out. You can close your eyes if you'd like. You can leave them open, but just let's breathe in and breathe out. And we can all do that too, in silence together. So when you're ready, why don't we all come back? And Charlie and I have some questions um, that we thought might be interesting to start the second half of our time together.
Before we do that, Chuck, let's open it up for people to be able to just share with whatever's going on with you right now. Whatever the lecture both Chuck and I have shared, what did you awaken in you? How did it connect with you? Um, how do you see it relevant in your own life?
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. That's a great idea.
Paige?
I'll tell you what I was thinking. So the first thing I was thinking was when you're talking about, oh, stop, was, the part about when you figure out it don't mean nothing. The phrase in Ed's book that don't mean nothing when it happens. The first thing, I'm an anthropologist and I just have this little flip smart alecky little things. Well, what the hell did you think it was? That's all it ever is. Yet, and then I had to sort of stop myself and go, but wait a minute, there's all this other like sort of righteous trauma that happens because of what do you think they do? That's all they ever do, kind of. So you can't just like flip it off like that. And then when you get to see it, you're right. It just like, I don't want to not see what I saw. I don't want to unsee the truth. It makes me feel really powerless. Even though, I can run out and fill out my ballot, I really feel fairly powerless. And so I try to remember that love is the answer, even when we don't know the question. I try to love people through it, including myself. I also I read the runes, and I thought of the rune Kano, which is like a less than sign or a greater than sign. It's a less than sign. Maybe it's a greater than sign. Depends on which way you turn it around. But this way, it symbols like an Indiana Jones torch, that you're walking through the tunnel with, and you can see with this. And it's about enlightenment, and it's the fire and the whole thing like that. But it's about enlightenment in your immediate sphere. It's like you can see enough to take the next step. You can be guaranteed that you can see where to put your feet today, but you really can't see where all the steps are between where you are now and the end of the tunnel. But you can trust that this light will like go with you. And the Prometheus thing made me think of all of that. And so, and yeah, it's all, I love the way that I'm going to learn how to do this, the way that y'all take myths and make them illuminate my life and my experiences. I like that a lot. So there you go. That's what I-
Yeah. Well, Paige, it's wonderful how you brought the sorry, I can't say that word very well. Say that for me.
R-U-N-E, rune,
Yeah.
R-U-N-E, rune.
Rune into this. And I think that's the when you look at nature-based spirituality, it's all about bringing the myth in. It's all about bringing nature and it's all about bringing the light in. And what in Prometheus did is he brought his own light back in to himself and brought that spirit, or I should say soul, back in where he illuminated. And in the end of the story is they picked a cave for he and Panthea to live in. And really at the end, he comes out and they don't live in the cave, they live in nature outside. And that's really special because he's then getting connected back to that. And just as you were saying, walking, one foot at a time with your own torch.
Yeah, you'll be able to see the next right step, but you might not see the whole trip in front of you.
Yeah.
Bingo.
And it's also a metaphor, and what you made me think about, Paige, is that it's when you're walking in darkness, and the darkness is all around you, it's the light of your own intellect that helps you to navigate through that darkness. It is that torch. When you have all of that stuff coming at you from so many different directions, and you can't see but the first few steps in front of you, it is that your ability to be able to discern one moment from the next moment to the next moment. That's where that power comes from that enables us to get through these difficult times. Adam.
Yeah, powerful story. I'm a mythology nerd and had never heard that version. Never heard it told quite like that. So thank you both. A couple of things came up for me. One, thought back over my own time in the military. And Chuck, you were saying something about, you remember a specific time when it was like, your soul was kind of left behind. And I think for me, it was like in pieces over, it wasn't anything quite so dramatic. There was one that kind of sticks out more than others, but, there's all these different things that kind of come to mind that, and I got out in 2011, I did 4 combat deployments. And I've been through yoga training. I recently completed a meditation teacher training. Speaking of which, so you're talking about fire. In yoga, they call it Chaitanya Atma, and it's the soul. And it's interesting that we're talking about fire because for me personally, there's a level of meditation that I'm beginning to access that feels a whole lot like the fire of my physical body, my energetic body, and it's something in me that actually causes heat, literal heat that I can feel and that I can sense. So it's really interesting. And there's a lot there that I'm going to be able to keep unpacking just, from hearing the telling. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Adam, for sharing that with us.
Well, and Adam, I'm very familiar with yoga as well. And after you practice for a number of years, you start to feel that fire burning on the inside. It's illumination. It's something that when I first started yoga, I didn't even know I was going to feel that. And now and it's amazing and it's humbling and it's real. And I think when we've had our traumas, we look for doorways to help alleviate whatever pain that we may be going through, and connecting to that divine fire within us that the myth of Prometheus is talking about. helps us to move through our pains in a healthier way than than others of us who don't know that fire that lives within us, that they can't tap into that as a resource.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It was a resource that I'm, in a lot of ways, recently, it's been an evolution, but more and more realizing it's a resource that's always with me and that I always have. And looking at my veteran friends, that's why I'm here right now. I know there's ways for me to help my buddies, but one-on-one hasn't really been successful. Yeah. So that I don't know. I would love to be around me from, like, 5 to 10 years ago, and see what I could do to help.
That's really important, Adam, that you say it like that. And that's the thing, I think, when we talk about soul or the truest self, and really connecting with the light and the fire, is recognizing that that's a way that can help bring us through the trauma. It is not to put it aside. It is not to try. It is to open the door, the window, the hole in the wall, whatever it is, and use the soul as a way to go through, or use the fire as a way to go through. That is so important. And I think that's what we're hopefully teaching our fellow veterans is yeah, this is going to hurt, but you can't do it without your soul, or you can do it with your soul. And if you're going to try to do it without your soul, you're just going to run into whatever concrete wall or whatever it is that's just going to stop you. um, because sometimes you have to just create the hole through it.
Well, and
And I
like you
think,
just mentioned,
yeah,
like when I've said the word soul to my buddies, they're like,
yeah, right.
So and for me, and I look back to me from 2016, and it was on a yoga mat for the first time, because I read a book that made sense to my mind. Um, so I was like, all right, I'm not scared. Yoga's going to be easy. I'll go do it. I got on the mat and I was just like, whoa, this is so uncomfortable. Oh my gosh. I thought yeah, it's just such an interesting journey.
It is an interesting, and I had a similar thing, Adam, when I that was the first time I ever got onto a yoga mat. I was a athlete, football player, that kind of personality type, and I ended up doing my first time at a yoga class, and I didn't tell any of my friends I was going to go do the yoga, and it just it kicked my butt in a way that I didn't know. And I was like, wow, there is something to this.
Yes.
And I just kept going. And I'm so glad I did. And I was a lost, I was Prometheus, where chained up against the rock at that time. And if you think about it, your soul is already kind of doing the things it needs to do in order to open you up and to help you on your path to healing and restoration. And sometimes we are our own worst enemy, and we subvert that. And we don't take those opportunities to go and explore those things because we're afraid of what other people might think. And boy, am I glad I didn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you guys. This is only my second time being in this group, and I have to tell you, I did not know that there were adults in this world like all of you here. Every one of you that I've heard talk. So and Gail especially, not especially, but Gail also, I just wanted to say the stuff you said about opera, it's so true. Like lately in the last 5 or 6 months, I'll hear like a musical come on the radio and tears come to my eyes. And so I really think that, and you mentioned it too, being aware that, oh yeah, opera and the military, where's the link? It's art, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing that can awaken. So thank all of you. And Paige, with the retreat, that sounds awesome. I'd love to come help if I were closer.
Adam, oh, Paige, we can't hear you.
You can come. It's warm down here. You can come.
One of the things I want to just tie back, what's really powerful here is the physicality of it. And with the physicality, that's the way you can connect with your true spirit, with your soul, your truest self. It's just another way into the path. And thank you.
Adam, where did you serve? Where were you at?
It was Army, 97 to 2011. I deployed right after 9/11 to the Philippines. There was a hostage rescue that I did commo support for. It was an American missionary couple and a Filipino nurse. And then Iraq twice and Kuwait. And I heard that both of you are in nukes. My dad was a nuclear weapons specialist for the Army. He was a warrant officer.
Wow.
And served, I think he was already out by the time it was handed over to the Air Force. But yeah, it's
Very early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well before my time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. We are so grateful you're here.
Yes.
And just consider this a home that you can come to, and for strength and support and encouragement and healing and all those things. So
these are once a month?
These are once a month, yeah.
Well,
we've got 2 more coming. Next month we'll have 2 different things. We'll be doing the Warriors Gathering. Gail's going to be doing the opera thing at our next one. And then we also have a Memorial Day event, and that'll be with Dr. Tick and Kate and myself. So that'll be on Memorial Day as well. So it's we're going to do a full Memorial Day weekend celebration, remembrance. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, Adam, if you just connect with the Rose Center gathering room, you'll get the information, and I can throw my email in the chat box.
Rose Center Gathering Room?
Yes, I'll put my email in the chat box so that anybody, if you want to just ask questions.
Yes.
That's me.
And I will go. Actually, I'll put mine in the chat also.
I just want to make a comment, I can, about Gail. You know, I'm this ridiculous Sons of Anarchy fan, which is supposed to be like Macbeth on motorcycles. And then I ask, why do I really like this? Oh, because it's Vikings on motorcycles. Okay. And you know, and I've watched Macbeth several times trying to first off, understand what exactly is happening in Macbeth, because I never really can exactly figure it out. And no 2 versions ever seem to really make sense to me completely. And then I can't really patch it quite over, but I can see it. And I, you know, it's, I don't know. It just makes me want to say absolute power corrupts absolutely, even on these really tiny, small scales.
Yeah.
And how no matter how hard you try to have it both ways, you just can't. So that's just Macbeth. That I don't even know what Macbeth really means, but there you go. And I'm really looking forward to that with you.
Yes. Gail, just to say this, my father was an opera singer.
Really?
Yeah, and a music. He did musicals, and the one that he did a lot was Man of La Mancha, which is another sort of myth that is kind of fun to look at. I say fun because he's a fool as well as all sorts of other things, but it really is interesting. So thank you.
Yeah, we've done so many different kinds. I mean, currently we're working on Macbeth. The one we just finished was Madame Butterfly.
Oh.
Or we did one that's very unknown called The Anonymous Lover. It's a Black composer living in France at the time of Mozart. So it was very interesting when we did it, time-wise, within what was happening in the country. Before that, we did Eurydice. So those have been our deep dives, but we've worked with so many different operas, and it's really interesting how much there is to connect with, and the themes. I mean, it's very surprising, because most people think maybe there'll be one thing to talk about, and it's like pop, 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 pop.
Opera is very complex. I just know that from watching my dad, when he'll take Tristan or something, or and this is music, but also an opera, and he'll start to really study it. And we're not talking one or two books, but we're talking about a lot, really diving into what it means, the characters and all that. It really does. It can be can help bring up a lot of stuff, for someone. It can help with having that catharsis we were talking about. That connection.
So anybody else want to share about how these myths like Prometheus are helping to help you work through some of the things that are going on right now, like the pandemic, like we just had reckoning with racial justice with the conviction of Derek Chauvin, and the social upheavals that are happening. How do you see this in relevance to your life, and how can you use this myth as a way to be able to move through your moral injuries? Christine?
Hello, I'm a non-military person, so perhaps if a military person wants to go ahead first and use this time, maybe Madame Jeannette Erard and the partner want to come in. And I know I've seen you before, Karen Adams, but I don't know. So I'll just wait a little second to know if somebody else wants to go first before I interrupt.
I think you can go ahead.
Yes.
We want this to be a talking circle, and we're intimate enough to be able to have that, and to be openly sharing, because there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and we want to be able to provide that space and time for you to be able to share what's in your heart that needs to be shared, so that by the end of the when we close up today, that you're feeling a little lighter and better, and a little bit more back in your body and relaxed and ready to move forward through the rest of the time until we meet again in next month. So please share.
Well, what would assist me to get back in my body a little bit is two things. One is a quick question that I'll just like to check. Asia and Panthea came to Prometheus. Was Prometheus heard by anyone? Like they came, but did you emphasize that Prometheus did all of this by himself? Because you're supporting a support group. So who was Prometheus' support group? What's the equivalent in the mythology? Was it Asia and Panthea, or did the poor guy have to do it everything by himself?
Asia was his wife, and Panthea was Asia's sister, and they supported him by talking with the earth and other characters within. There was the hours were there, the HOURS, I'd have to get sorry, my memory is sort of failing me, but they did have their own support group you might say, for each other. And they were very concerned and supportive of Prometheus as he was on the rock. So he did have a support group. And there was others that were concerned about him. The underworld god, Demogorgon, also saw Prometheus as well. And from what I gather, at one point, Prometheus was not ready to give up, but you know, you have one of those moments where it's like everything is at, and you're like, would this just stop? That's what I see Prometheus had. And Asia, his wife, and Panthea, because Panthea had a dream, thought that Prometheus was actually going to quit. But Demogorgon said no, he wasn't, you know, and then the earth also was a part of that as well, supporting him. So yes, he had a support group.
Ah, the earth was supporting him too. This is fantastic. I want to say thank you so very much for this group. This is only my third time, or maybe fourth. And thank you so much for allowing the community to come together of all communities, and for military people to yet again support so many other people while they have to come here for their own needs. So I want to thank you very much. And my other question is very much asking you for support. Whenever I come here, you talk about myth and you talk about healing, and then you talk about myth in terms of like experiencing myth, you know. I remember this man, now he lives in Africa, and he was talking about being swallowed in the earth and coming out, and what the conversation that emerged after that was, but he was genuine and just a very at ease and at peace with this part of him, engaging with these not hardly believable by people who go by hard evidence, you know. And so it really supports me in my own work. I go through doctorate where I dance with the element, the snow and the ocean. I spent half a year in Hawaii, 4 months at a time at one point. So one in the winter and one in the summer. And I know that you're in Hawaii, I think, Charlie?
I wish.
Yeah.
That's why I said that. Pardon me.
I wish.
I wish to
No,
you.
I'm in Denver. I love this state. It's wonderful. But right now I'm wanting hot, warm weather. So,
Well, it snowed here today, and it's nice. Snow is nice.
yeah.
And so, you know, like now I'm at the end, like I'm gonna defend soon. And I've talked about somatic amnesia, because in somatics, we have this thing about somatic amnesia, like you can't feel pain because you're equipped to get a shell around it so that you can function in life without feeling the pain every day. That's somatic amnesia. It can be personal, and it can be like cultural. Our culture function on somatic amnesia. That's why we send warriors to war, doing incredible service and just like, you know, yanking out their soul. Somatic amnesia is functioning like this. So people ask me what's my next step, and I have this vision that I want to work with. I want to tackle peace and conflict issues, but really be there on I really want to be there, not just like as a hippie dancing barefoot on the ground, but just really like when someone says that they feel swallowed by the earth, and my work is to like feel the relationship on the earth. Like my work is to dance the myth, but I keep having these visions. So when the first time I went to Hawaii, maybe 3 years ago, I was on the plane and just from Canada, so it's a long flight from the East Coast, And just as I was arriving in Hawaii for the first time, I had this vision, like my eyeballs were open, but like there was a dream in front of me. And I saw warriors. And then, so when I landed, warriors of no gender, they were just warriors, you know, it's an open dream. So they weren't too fleshy or defined. They were just warriors. So then I land in Hawaii, and I tell my friend girl who's there, and she does a lot of prayers. She's involved with dancing, very much deep there. And then I said, why would I, first of all, I'm a pacifist. Why would I dream of warrior? And my first reference on war is my grandfather, and I didn't have a good relationship with him. And second of all, I was thinking warrior man, and I'm like, I'm always surrounded by sisters with women. Why am I dreaming about man when I'm coming to like Hawaii? Like, what's wrong with me? and so from 3 years, you know, like this vision evolved, and when it evolved, and when I say to my committee or my peers that I want to get involved in peace, they're like, oh yeah, you want to be the hippie twinkle the bells and going like, yeah. And I'm like, it's so strong in me that there's a relationship with somatics and healing, but healing is not bringing people to become weak. It's not like taking their strength. It's actually like giving them space to hold strength for themselves, and thus hold strength for a community, and thus do good, you know. So I'm here for that, because I'm trying to figure out, why did I dream about like warriors on my plane to Hawaii? And also I'm really serious about, like, I don't do trauma work. I'm not a psychoanalyst, so I wouldn't be able to go with someone and hold them through trauma expertise. But when we're talking about the individual being traumatized, is there an initiative, or is the military listening to you? Like, how do you negotiate protecting and serving, and because the warrior is an archetype that's not going to disappear, and it's not like a bad archetype. It's a worthy archetype. So how do perhaps someone as performance oriented as me connect to someone who has launched a missile, to also the structure that made the world requiring launching the missile? Mm-hmm. So like, how is do you have a task?
Well, I think that's one of the big questions that we all try to answer, and being able to, you know, how do we bridge this information, this knowledge, this wisdom, this understanding of the nature of the warrior archetype. That's a pattern of power. It's a fundamental energy pattern that is with us everywhere. It's within all cultures, within all civilizations. It's there. It's not going away. And we've got to be able to heal it and get it into a state of strength, so that we can embody the fullness of the warrior, whether you're a man or a woman, and you embody the fullness of that, so that you can discern from that divine intelligence that you all have, to know when you're being used for a noble purpose and when you're not. To be able to say we are one human family, and get to a place that we want to get to a place where war becomes obsolete, where we become a species that is incapable of doing harm to one another. But until we get there, we've got to have a warrior class that is healthy, that is strong, that is courageous, that is noble in heart, soul, and mind, that is integrous, that has impeccable integrity, and that is connected to the interconnectedness of life. And that's what is missing so much, is that they've divorced the soul, the conscience, from the soldier, from the airmen, from the Marine, from the seamen, all of that, they've divorced that. So, and it was done intentionally because man or humankind, man or woman, it inherently doesn't want to kill another person. We resist that. We push against that. We are revolted by that. And you have to be taught. You have to violate your own instincts in order to do that. And so that once you override that, you fall into this, about 98% of the population that has ever engaged in any kind of killing or being in war is affected by it. Only about 2% is not affected by it. They have no capacity for empathy. They would be in that sociopathic, psychopathic frame of mind. So we're all touched by it. And if the warrior's not going away, and we don't have a leadership and a policy makers that are doing this and understanding this, we are like Prometheus that has run down the mountain that says we need to help people to connect back to their sense of conscience and what is noble and right and just and fair and good. And the forces that be, those tyrannical forces that seem to govern all of us, we stand in opposition to it. But if you look at the arc of justice through time, we will come out in the end on this in the right way. Truth and love, I believe, always win. But it is a very difficult mountain to climb. And we are doing our best to try to make that happen and to try to merge and bring together the best of both worlds, not to cancel each other out, but to bring the best, to merge it, to synthesize it. And that's what we hope to do.
So,
Chuck?
yeah, Christine, to add on to what Charlie was saying is, the warrior type, all of us, we fit, if we started to really think about our soul purpose, our noble purpose, and really started seeing that as we are puzzle pieces into this earth, into this universe, if we started thinking that way, there would be no need for war. And that's what I'm hearing you say is, how do you become part of the puzzle to make that happen? And there's Dr. Bill Plotkin, he's written some books, but his most latest is on Journey Soul Initiation. And this really talks about how to get there. And it's really the puzzle pieces, to put the puzzles together through an earth, through ecological ways, through connecting with the earth, and really seeing that as, once we do that, as our way of walking together. And, if we think about it, if we all got to know each other that way, we wouldn't want to kill each other.
And so you believe that and so you think that there are people who have to, you believe that the policy can be changed, that it's, that there's a lot of healing to be done for the damage already done, but there's the same sort of like model applies to advocating to policy groups and politicians to try to find another way to run their economy?
That's a big question. I don't know, Paige, I think you wanted to say
I just want to say, my suggestion to you is use your dancing and this thing that you do to, you can only change the world really one person at a time. And, maybe you get an auditorium of 500 at a time or something like that. But use your art to help like other people find their Prometheus fire so they can see, because if everybody can see, then maybe they'll make better decisions.
Mhm.
So like help with your dancing and with your earthing and your whatever you're doing, help people to find their fire, because each one of us teaches another one of us And the more people that see, we need critical mass of people seeing to make a difference. And so
Mhm.
each one teach one, and however you can is what I say to you. And you'll be great.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And what you're doing is really important
Yeah.
because you're connecting the somatics with the dance with the earth, dancing with the snow. Just think about that. Dancing with snow. That just blows my mind. But you don't do it from here. You do it from the soul.
Mhm.
No, because if you do it from here, you get frostbite.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Um, Before we move into our next the meditation here, and I just want to give everybody a chance who wants to say something about some of the moral crises that are going on in our country right now. Does anybody want to say something about the conviction that happened a couple days ago that brings up a lot of grief, a lot of emotion? How did this impact you? How do you feel about us leaving Afghanistan? How do you feel about that? Because did we accomplish what we hoped to accomplish there, or are we leaving a big gaping hole in the souls of a lot of our veterans that is going to hurt? And how do we handle that?
My 2 cents worth
Sure.
on that one is we haven't won a war since World War II. So this is nothing new. We've kind of backed out as gracefully as possible, which was not very graceful, out of everything since then. So in a way, this isn't new.
That's true. And it isn't new. It's just, that's the whole point of having these gatherings, and to being able to, talk about and recognize that we can't be just putting people in harm's way and doing these things without recognizing that it has an impact on us. It has an impact on on our health and well-being. It has an impact on the people, that their families and their children and everything. And these pains that are communalized. If they are communalized, they give an opportunity to give us a chance to grieve, to mourn, to get it out of our system. But if we keep repeating the same pattern over and over again, I think we fall into a very, very disastrous trap. And if we don't voice it, we may find ourselves there again, someplace else. Is there anybody want to say something about, how do you know when you're in integrity with yourself? How do you know? Like for me, I know when I'm in integrity for myself, there's a sense of clarity. There's a sense of lightness in my decision, even though if it's a heavy decision that I have to make, or a difficult decision that I have to make. There's a sense of peace that comes with after the decision. There's something, there's a quality of that that's different than if I am out of integrity. Where I'm doing something because I'm forced to or compelled to do something. There's a resistance that I can feel on the inside that says, don't do this, stop. don't go it. Don't answer this. Don't write this email. Don't send this text. Don't, just turn the other way, go the other direction. I hear that really clear, but how do we know that? And I think what for me is this just a sense of clarity and peace that I've made the right decision. And I may not have made the wrong decision, but I'm still in integrity. And if I've made the wrong decision, I'm in the position where I'm going to learn something from it, where I'm going to learn from that mistake, but I'm still in integrity with myself. I'm not saying yes when I mean no, and I'm not saying no when I mean yes. I'm saying yes when I mean yes, and I'm saying no when I mean no. Does anybody else want to share just a little bit about how you know? Paige?
I know when there's not a bunch of conversation in my head, when I'm not asking 47 people to help me talk about, not that I always exaggerate, it's not 47 people, honestly, but not having to go, okay, am I like out here in left field or not? Where I'm when I feel like I can stop that, or when I'm not having like 2 or 3 people on my shoulders having this little yappity conversation with me, because I've been sitting in a place where there's been these really hard things going on all inside my head, all these different, like my parts don't trust me because, I'm making bad decisions or whatever you want to call that. But when I finally figure out what in the world is going on and I get clear about it, which I think is what you mean is integrity, it stops.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, this is not going to be this is probably not going to be that like that. And this is different. And, this may be sad. This may be hard. This may be difficult, but this isn't about you. You don't have nothing to do with this. And it just gets clear where the way it turns out may really suck and be sad and unfortunate, but this is what I have to do to be right by me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I can stop wondering and trying to gather enough data to, because eventually something happens and I get this piece that makes it go together and everybody stops talking and it settles and okay, that's right. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I know that I'm integrity with myself, I think.
I think that's brilliant. I think that's, you're right on there. That's true. Very, very true. Okay, does anybody else want to say something real quick on that topic?
Are you
Yes.
able to hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jeanette. I think for me, it comes to a point where there is such a stumbling block, such a dam of stuff. And when I finally either jump over the dam or break the dam, break the log jam, I feel an incredible lightness of being.
So true. Yeah. So very true. There is that sense of lightness of being. I love it.
Well said.
Because until that time, you're dragged down and you really can't move.
Yeah.
You can't dance. You can't sing. But when you make the decision, and maybe sometimes singing helps you get to the decision. Sometimes moving, dancing helps you get to that decision. Sometimes writing helps you get to that decision.
Mm-hmm.
sometimes being silent helps you get to that.
That is right. That's right, Jeanette. Yes. So true. I have found that out very often sometimes when I'm in the middle of an important decision that I have to make in life, that sometimes the best thing is just to move and just walk and just to get someplace to clear the mind, to sing, to do whatever I can to stretch out, because then I can finally start to clear up what was going on in here. And there is that buoyancy afterwards where you feel so light. So thank you, Jeanette.
Yes, thank you. So Charlie, we got about 10 minutes.
We do have about 10 minutes. You want to take over here and move us into the closing part? Does anybody, before we do the closing part here, have anything that they want to get off? And just so that you can be free of it, and so that this meditation that we get into will leave you feeling lighter, better, and ready to sing
Or dance.
or dance.
Or do both. So I'd like everybody to get into a comfortable place. You can have your eyes closed or open if you wish. Closing them might be a little easier to get to where we need to go. I'd like everybody to start with just scanning your toes. Start with your toes. Just see what your toes need. And then I'd like you to move towards your knees. What do your knees need? And as you move from your knees, what's the energy in your pelvis? Then as we move to the stomach, that place of nutrition, what does your stomach need? And moving from that to your chest, what does your chest need? And then as we get to the top of our head, just let it all go. And as you start hearing the singing bowl, I want you to dive down, dive deep, deep into the pelvic bowl. I want you to go into that liminal space of the pelvic bowl. I want you to feel it, smell it, see it, hear it. Get comfortable and calm. Now that you're in the liminal space, I want you just to sit with soul, sit with your true self. And as you're sitting there with your soul, ask your soul, what is my essence? What is my true essence? Let the soul sing, sing, sing. Let the soul dance, dance, dance. Let the soul dance and sing your essence to you. And as you hear the singing bowl, you hear the soul talking to you in your own language. Now, as the singing bowl fades, let the gift sit with you. Let your essence sit with you. And take a few moments to just be with it. Now, it's time to start our way back, to share ourselves and our essence with our fellow travelers. As you say goodbye and depart with your soul, just take a moment and acknowledge the gift. Acknowledge what your soul does for you. Now, as you ascend to the middle world, I want you to take a moment to give your heart a hug, a warm, joyful, equanimous hug. And remember the warmth as you come back into our middle world. And as you come, take a few moments to come back into our world, and you'll have an opportunity to share what you've been through. So when you're ready, open your eyes and come back to our world, and we'll take a moment to share if you'd like. If anybody would like to share, you can just unmute yourself and share what you got from the meditation. If not, that's okay as well.
I wanted to thank Christine because she reminded me of that about 20 years ago, I went back to school to find out why music was so important to me. And I studied movement and music and storytelling and art and became an expressive arts therapist. Yes, yes, yes. So, you know, you can always create your own dance. We can always create our own song. We can always draw our own picture. We always write our own story. And amid COVID and all of the other things I have to do, thank you, Christine, for reminding me.
Maybe you were talking, Jeanette. I was just quiet, trying not to think about homework or whatnot. And then I took a deep breath, and I was like, yes, the breath, you know. And all of a sudden, I heard what I wrote there. I was like, oh. So merci, everyone, and good luck, everyone, and see you soon.
Well,
Thank you, Christine.
thank you so much. Thank you, Chuck, for that meditation, and thank you for everybody being here and joining us in this Sacred Warrior Gathering Circle that we do every month. And thank you for just being present here with us today. And yes, Jeanette, it's moving through art, it's moving through song, it's moving through dance. The secret of the healer, I think one of the four is knowing how to sing, to dance, to write, and in silence, to move. It's all of those things that really invigorate and enervate our souls and our spirits. And boy, do we need that today in the time we are. We will be having our next meeting is going to be with Gail. We're going to be doing the opera. We're going to be doing Macbeth. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be great. Then in June, our next meeting in June, we're going to be having a very special guest who's going to be talking to us about, she's a Vietnamese refugee. She was one of the boat people after we left Vietnam, and the things that she had to and her family had to overcome. And we've got a lot of other great things planned for this group. So please come back and join us. Thank you for being here. We always close out, before we close out and say goodbye, one of these prayers from Prayers for Healing. That's a wonderful blessings and poems and meditations that we have. And this is a short one for tonight. So thank you. And as I read this, if you want to close your eyes, you can. If not, it's a beautiful, beautiful poem. When each day is sacred, when each hour is sacred, when each instant is sacred, earth and you, space and you, bearing the sacred through time, you'll reach the fields of light.
Amen.
Amen. Blessings to each and every one of you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.